This program is made possible by the loyal financial support of the friends and partners of Family Policy Institute.
Good evening and welcome to Watchmen on the Wall. Thank you for joining us. Tonight we're at the Bless Africa, Bless Israel benefit dinner here at the Cape Town Hotel in Cape Town. And I'm with the organizer of this wonderful event, Reverend Albert Mbenga. Reverend Albert, this is a wonderful event, an event to gather Africans, Christians, and other people together to come and bless Israel. What inspired this event?
Thank you to all our viewers of Watchmen on the Wall. Thank you, Errol, for the question. When we look to the history of Africa, we'll see that many African nations, they were blessed when they have a very good relationship between Israel and Africa. And we know how the Jewish people, when they came in Africa, how they developed the economy of Africa in different ways. But without understanding the spiritual connection between Israel and Africa, most of the nation in the 1973, they cut off ties with Israel, and most of the country also, in most of the country, they chase out the ambassador. And when you look to all these countries, and the first one is the country Congo, where I come from, one of the powerful country in our continent of Africa. You know, we don't need, my friend Errol, we don't need nuclear energy in Africa, because the River Congo can supply hydraulic, the clean one, hydraulic electricity in the entire continent of Africa. I think you know, with all the load shedding we're having. But look to Congo. Why? Because in 1973, our former President Mobutu stood at the UN General Assembly and made a very regrettable choice. He said, today I'm going to make a choice between a friend Israel and the brother Egypt. I'm choosing Israel, I'm choosing Egypt. He cut off ties from Israel, and that is to see what is happening in Congo. And building up of this, we see what's happening in our beautiful continent. We've got everything. But when people speak about Africa, is poverty. When people speak about Africa, is malaria, is corruption, and even Ebola. It comes from Congo. When, as a spiritual, we see this sign like a curse. And you are a man of God, you know. Wherever there is curse, there is nothing we can fight curse unless the benediction. And you can only find in one scripture in the Bible where curse and blessing are together. Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. That's why Africa Bless Israel is a movement. It's a movement who's going to bring together African to stand with Israel, because this is the right friend we need for our entire continent of Africa. Thank you.
So you believe there is a direct blessing between African nations that have a good relationship with Israel and are blessing Israel. Are you concerned about the South African government's stance on Israel?
And you know, if I believe this, if God sent me to South Africa, I think it's for that purpose. Just to say to South African, pay attention. When you speak to other nation, it's different. But when it comes to Israel, you have to be very careful, because that nation, God has a plan for that nation. And whoever come against this nation, there is always something bad coming to that nation. That's why wherever I meet the South African, I tell them, look to my country, Congo. The country organized the royal jungle, you know, the fighting between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. Right. He was in Congo in 1974. But a country organized such event, look how it is in a mess. A rebellion, the only country in Africa where 13 different African nations came together and fought. It was in Congo. Why? Because there is a curse, and wherever there is a curse, you must go back to the original of the curse.
So the Bible is clear: if you bless Israel, I will bless you. If you curse Israel, I will curse you. So this event is a benefit dinner for the nation of Israel. Tell us a little bit of the details.
The detail of this benefit dinner, we have made a provisional booking of the CTICC, Cape Town International Conference, to have a summit, international summit, where we're going to speak about why Africa should bless Israel. It's going to take 3 days, 3 days of summit. We're going to bring Africans from all over, within South Africa, across the continent, even abroad, to come together and speak about the blessing that we need for Africa. And later on, the latest day that we're going to have now, a celebration where we are expecting 5,000 people to come together and celebrate the Lord. And as soon as we finish to Cape Town, we're going to Johannesburg because they are already ready. A stadium in Soweto is ready to bring African together. That's where we're going to collect a public offering that we're going to present in Israel. And then we say to the Lord, we have done what you have requested us to do. We have blessed Africa. It's up to you to think about Africa. That's it.
Pastor Mbenga, that is an incredible, compelling, and inspiring vision. We bless you from Watchmen on the Wall with your vision. And I agree with you. When we bless Israel as a continent, as a nation, we will see God's blessing.
Amen.
It's clear through Scripture that Israel is God's people.
Amen.
The church is God's people.
Amen.
And so when the church comes together to bless Israel and to encourage Africa to bless Israel, only good can come out of that. So thank you, sir.
And I believe if we as a Christian, we don't go back to the roots of Genesis chapter 12, chapter 12, verse 3. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. If we as a Christian, we as African, we don't obey to that command, I think the continent will still continue like it is happening. But this is the time for us to stand with the true friend, Israel, because many African nations, they were blessed when they have a very good relationship with Israel. Many. But without understanding the spiritual connection. Because when it comes to Israel, this is spiritual. There is a spiritual connection between when it comes to Israel. All the nations we know in the world, there is no connection with God like it is with Israel. And then when with all the nations that we said before, we're blessed. But when, without understanding the spiritual connection, they cut ties with Israel, and we know what's happened. And that's everywhere we're going. We're standing with you as South African to tell you that you have to stand for your own country. When it comes to Israel, you have to stand. Because the benediction, the blessing of the nation is when you stand with Israel, you stand with the Jewish people. And as we say, this is a movement we're starting, and today is just because we want to bring more Africans together here in Cape Town. Why in Cape Town? Because in 2010, the Lausanne Conference came in South Africa, in Cape Town. There were the Lausanne Conference. All the evangelists came at the Cape Town Convention Center in 2010. This is where they declare that when it comes to Israel, the church doesn't need to confirm with Israel. It was in Cape Town at the convention center with a budget of 6 million rand, $6 million. $6 million. It was in Cape Town where the church put a cross concerning Israel. Because when it's about Israel, it doesn't concern God. God is concerning also only about Israel, about the church. And we want in that place where the church put the cross on Israel, Africa bless Israel, would like to bring 1,500 delegates from all Africa to come together for a 3-day summit where we're going to speak about why Africa should bless Israel. And then the 4th day, we want to close with a celebration where Africa will come together. We've got already more than 10 African nations who have already preparing for this event, and that's the meaning of the benefit dinner. God has graced me a gift to bring people together. That's what I believe, the favor that Hashem has given me. I have this grace to bring people together, but I don't have a grace to bring money. And that's why today is about telling you, we want to have this event. We can make it if we all together with our own other friends where they are, we can come together and stand. And from there, we go into Johannesburg. I think Ben Schwartz, he knows, already planning the one-day event to take place in a stadium in Soweto. But they're waiting for me before we have an event in Soweto. But first is Cape Town, because it's a mother city. We start with the mother city, and then we go to Johannesburg. God bless you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
I'm speaking to Ben Swartz, the chairman of the South African Zionist Federation, and also
Chairman of South African Friends of Israel.
chairman of South African Friends of Israel. So we had this wonderful event here, the benefit dinner for Africa Bless Israel, which is a wonderfully inspiring event calling Africans to bless Israel, to support Israel, to speak out for Israel. You encouraged by events like this?
Absolutely. I've been working in this space for a number of years now, and I think the amount of people in Africa that actually stand behind Israel and stand behind the Jews, I think it's actually incredible. People actually totally underestimate the depth and the amount of people that truly see the relevance of Israel today, and the necessity and the importance of supporting it and standing behind it.
So in your estimation, in the work you do, and the people you get into connection, I'm sure you attend a lot of events of this nature. Do you see a growing support for Israel among Christians and other people across the continent of Africa?
Absolutely. Look, I think often the context is missed, and people of faith, particularly people of faith that both believe in the Older Testament and the New Testament, are only coming to terms today in contemporary times with the existence of the modern state of Israel. People are starting to reconcile the relevance of that, and it's a process. It's almost, I believe, an awakening to the relevance of that. And what you would have seen a couple of years back is very few people, or people not understanding how many people there were. But now that it's becoming and gaining in a momentum in its own right, people are putting their heads up and connecting the dots and actually seeing how many people actually hold and believe in the relevance of this relationship. And yes, it is growing, I believe, in stature.
I asked Ambassador Lenk this question. I want to ask you the same because of your particular work that you do. And what can ordinary Christians do to change the views that people have, sometimes misinformed views of Israel? What can ordinary people do to change that?
Look, I think it's a matter of being able to access the information, a matter of being able to access the facts. And there is so much misinformation out there that is often the challenge that we're facing. We have large parts of this world that are very hostile towards Israel and the Jews, compounded by a media which buys into the hype that is created. And that kind of creates a blindness around people's ability to access what's really happening and what's the actual truth. And funny enough, that's where the role of South African Friends of Israel and the Zionist Federation is so critical. The information is there, but it's a matter of people getting access to it and being able to understand it in terminology and in talk that is understandable, and it's there. And then the important thing is for people to share this information, and to get this information out there so that people are empowered.
So then how do people access that information? Is there websites? How do people get that?
That's right. So, look, I think it's a responsibility of South African Friends of Israel to create these platforms for distribution. So, for instance, today there's content. The information's available. It's a matter of taking this content and putting it onto these platforms, whether it be television networks, whether it be on the internet, whether it be through streaming, through YouTube, and basically ensuring that this information is pushed on. And that's the responsibility we're taking on. And it's a process because, as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day, but we're doing it. And slowly but surely you'll see this information becoming a lot more easily accessible to the people out there.
So is there a website people can access?
There is a Facebook page called South African Friends of Israel. There's also the Facebook page of the South African Zionist Federation, and there's also the web page sazf.org.za, on which you can access this information. We can also send information if you do want to be and subscribe to databases. You can send your information to info@beyachad, BEYACHAD.co.za, info@beyachad.co.za, and people can be connected to the databases which are currently being used to distribute this information and content, which in turn, when it comes into your communities or into your hands, feel free to pass it on to broader communities and the networks and communities that you connected to.
Ben Swartz, thank you for the great work you're doing to inform and educate people about the truth about Israel. We bless you, and thank you for talking to Watchmen on the Wall.
Thank you. Thanks.
The key areas that I've been largely involved in the last 4 years is in the area whereby the South African Jewish community has placed great emphasis on reaching out and engaging with other communities in South Africa. And one of the key areas and the cornerstones of that has been the manner in which we have engaged with the Christian world in South Africa. And funny enough, around 4 years ago, it was really a territory that hadn't been explored and worked on in any degree of sustained efforts. And both the Johannesburg part of the Jewish community, or should we say the Johannesburg Jewish community, together with the Cape Jewish community, we put our heads down and we literally went out there, not knowing where and how our friends existed in support of Israel. And I think we largely started knocking on doors, and inquiring, is there something to engage on? Do we share something in common? What are your views on Israel? What are your views on the Jewish world? And I think we all embarked with a degree of caution, because we know in South Africa, we are told in South Africa that South Africa is not a very big friend of Israel. Well, that's what we're led to believe. And over these last 4 years, I can tell you quite conclusively that without any question of doubt, the vast majority of South Africans really do identify not just with the Jews of South Africa, but with Israel as well. And I think the process and what we are part of here tonight is part of this journey. We all partner in this process as Jews and Christians, realizing the relevance of what we hold in common. And really it's what we hold in common that brings us together here tonight. And what is it that we hold in common? They're value systems. This isn't, I was challenged a few weeks ago, and a person said to me, you work with the Christian world because you perceive their enemy as your enemy, therefore they're your friend. I said, I'm sorry, you really, really have got it totally wrong. We engage with one another because we share common values. We share common ideals. We share an understanding of the value of life in this world and how important that is to us and to our families and to our friends. And that is our first point of departure. And it's on that basis that we engage as Christians and Jews in support of this ideal of what Israel represents. That's where we find our common ground, and that's where we all start our journey together. One of the questions that's often asked of me is, well, what about this kind of dichotomy, this duality, the Jew in South Africa, and where's your loyalty? Is it to South Africa or is it to Israel? And I say that is possibly the most ridiculous question I've ever been asked. The nations of the world over, hold their loyalties to two places or two destinations. We know that the Catholics, for instance, are loyal to South Africa and they are loyal to the Vatican. Or even the Muslims are loyal to South Africa and they're loyal to Mecca or to the concept of the Ummah. The Italians are loyal to South Africa and they are loyal to Italy. So therefore, there's no surprise or no dishonesty in saying that the Jews are loyal to South Africa and they are loyal to Israel. There's no right or ground for people to question such a concept. And we need to remember that and realize that Jews that participate and live in South Africa are as committed to this country as anyone, whether you are white, whether you are black, whether you are Xhosa, whether you are Zulu. We all have a common purpose, and that is building South Africa, making a difference here, and taking what's important to us and near to us, and including that in how we make a change. And that is why the Jewish community is so committed to ensuring that Israel's involvement in South Africa grows from strength to strength. Why? Because we believe and we know that that is what is good for South Africa.
Ambassador Lenk of Israel, it's a privilege to speak to you on Watchmen on the Wall. We're at the Africa Bless Israel event here at the Cape Town Hotel in Cape Town. Are you encouraged by the growing support for Israel amongst Christians in South Africa?
I am, actually. Firstly, it's a wonderful evening tonight, and I'm glad that we're together here at this event with so many friends. But that's the keynote. That's the message, is that wherever I go in South Africa, wherever Israel is mentioned across Africa, there are millions and millions of friends, because we're neighbors and we have so much in common and so many blessings that we share with each other. So tonight's title is Africa Bless Israel, but at the same way, it's equally important for Israel to bless Africa.
Yes. I think Israel has been a major blessing to Africa. We just look at the history of the relationship with different states of Africa and what Israel has done for Africa. But you know, what we see in the mainstream media doesn't really tell the true story.
That's right.
There is a lot of negativity against Israel, and people believe that is an overriding sort of feeling in South Africa. But when you attend events like this, you see there is just this overwhelming love, respect, and support for Israel.
Well, I think you're right, and I think that if you travel around South Africa, that you see that. Just last month, I was in the Eastern Cape, and wherever I went, people found a connection because they know of the Holy Land, and they know of Jerusalem, and they know of the Galilee, and they know of Nazareth, and they know of modern agriculture, and they know about innovation, and they know that Israel and Africa go together. And it makes sense that from the time of the Bible until today, we're connected. We're one. We have a shared destiny. And people understand that. And people understand that there are a tiny group of noisy people who have a different path. But it's not our path. It's not an African path. It's not a Jewish path. It's not a Christian path. And that path is the meaningful one. And it's spiritual. It's beautiful. And it brings Africa and Israel together.
Yeah, and I also believe that even though what we see in the media, the negativity with some of the issues, government officials, some of the things they've been saying, there's still on the ground a lot of support for Israel. A lot of people want to get closer to Israel, work with Israel. I noticed there's a huge increase in tourism from South Africa, especially amongst Christians, tour groups going to Israel, visiting the holy sites. So that is beginning to increase. So I see a warming of relationship, especially from a grassroots level.
Well, I think you're 100% right. And I think that your viewers, I hope the people who watch Watchmen on the Wall will come to the Holy Land and will visit and be moved by the stories that you've heard about in church and the stories, the places that you've dreamed about that are part of who you are, and come and see it with your own eyes and bear witness to the connection that Africa and Israel have for each other. That you go to Kenya, you go to Ethiopia, you go to Ghana, to Nigeria, to Ivory Coast. And yes, here in South Africa, there's a meaning. There's a connection that Christians and Jews have for each other. We go back 2,000 years. We really do, and we're family. And I hope that people who are watching us tonight are going to start looking at their plans and making that pilgrimage and making that visit to Jerusalem, to the holy city, to the place where Jesus walked, where David built his temple, or Solomon built his temple, the son of David. And it's ours, and it's yours, and it's something we share.
You know, I've never visited Israel yet. I'm hoping to do that very soon.
I don't know. I think that now this is it.
I'm hoping to do it very soon. But the one thing that I have noticed, that people that never been to Israel before and have visited, their view of Israel changes dramatically, profoundly when they come back, because they're exposed to the media and everything they see in the media, and then when they visit it personally, everything changes.
Well, I think that that's true, because you might have a picture in your mind, but you go and see that how the desert bloomed, a place where in the time of Genesis there was famine and drought, right? And my forefathers had to sojourn down to Egypt and became slaves. But you go to Israel of 2015, you'll see a bounty. You'll see unlimited amounts of water and of agriculture, and it's good and it's blessed. And you know that in places around Africa, this knowledge and experience and technology has been shared and goes together. And so Africans understand it. They get it. And they see, when they see it with their own eyes, they are like, I don't know, Joshua and Caleb, who were the two spies who came back and told the truth and gave the story to the Jewish people, the children of Israel wandering in the desert, that yes, we must go there because we can do it because God is with us.
Yeah, amazing. 3 people that are my heroes, all Jewish. Number 1, a young rabbi by the name of Jesus Christ. Don't know if you know him. Then
a nice Jewish boy from Israel.
You've heard of him, right?
Jewish boy from Israel.
And then there, King David.
Heard of him too?
And I always say that one day when I go to heaven, to be the first person besides Jesus that I want to meet is David, King David. I have a sort of bond with his story, with his experience.
But my friend, if you're bonded to David, you have to see his capital.
Absolutely.
Right? He built Jerusalem.
I'm planning.
Jerusalem was just a random city before then. But David made it the center of the world, didn't he?
That's right. It's called the City of David. Final question I want to ask you. A lot of Christians visiting Israel, visiting Jerusalem. How can Christians in South Africa change the view that the media puts out, some of the negativity about Israel? How can we play a role in changing that perception?
I think we just have to talk and tell our story and share and bear witness to what we believe is true, and be positive and be constructive and say, in South Africa, we need to create jobs in agriculture. Who's the best in the world at that? Well, it's the Israelis. South Africa, there's a problem of water management and having enough water. Well, who's the best in the world at that? It's the Israelis again. Who is involved in innovation and in creativity and startups? It's us. We can do things for each other. We can share our experiences. We can share our blessings. And South Africa will be better, and Israel will be better. We have a shared destiny. We need to speak up, and we need to act and do it.
Ambassador Lenk, thank you for talking to us at Watchmen on the Wall, and we bless your nation, Israel. And we hope the whole, yes,
Time for you to come.
and we hope the whole of Africa will bless Israel, because we need the blessing that Israel imparts to nations when we have good relationship and when we reach out to those wonderful nations.
We love Africa as a neighbor. We know, and if we go back to the time of David or to his son Solomon, right? We know there's an African connection. It's a family connection. It's one that goes back to the time of the Bible, but takes us to 2015. And so it's thanks for having me. It's been wonderful being with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Reverend Albert, thank you for bringing us all together tonight. Your Majesties, Rabbi, friends from the Zionist Federation and the Jewish community. It's really a wonderful thing to be with so many friends here in Cape Town. And one of the things in Jewish tradition is we find relevance in the weekly portion of the Bible that we read in synagogue. And each week through the year, you know that in Jewish tradition, 1 week a year, we do a portion so that by the end of the year, from the Jewish New Year to, or just after the Jewish New Year to after the next Jewish New Year, we make it through the 5 books of Moses, the first 5 books of the Torah. And just last Shabbat, last Saturday, in synagogues around the world, here in Cape Town and everywhere else, we read the story of the Bible. We're coming towards the end of the Jewish New Year, right? The Jewish New Year is in September. And so we're coming towards the end. We're in the book of Numbers now. And just last Shabbat, we told the story about the spies, right? Right? You all know this story, right? About the spies that were sent by Moses to go into the Promised Land. Yeah, we were talking about James Bond, right? So this is maybe where it started. So in Numbers 13, verse 32, the majority of the spies, what did they do? They came back with bad news. The land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people that we saw are in great height. And basically they were saying, no, stay away, be afraid. But there were 2. Right? Who were they? Everybody knew that. Of course, Joshua and Caleb, who had a different message. And Caleb in verse 30 said, let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome it. Friends, brothers and sisters, we have to be Joshua and Caleb. And we have an amazing story to tell. An amazing story. It's a story of miracles. It's a story of successes. It's a story of truth and a story of blessings. Africa bless Israel. That's what we're doing here tonight. And at the same time, right back, Israel bless Africa. And it's not just in theory. It's not just in concept. But it's in real life, friends. And it's happening. Christians throughout my whole region, throughout the whole Middle East, are on the run, are in danger. Whether it's in Iraq or in Syria, Iran, or in Egypt, they're in trouble. And Christians are disappearing from my region, except for one place, where the Christian community is growing, and that's in Israel. And if we look around Africa too, we see people being killed because they're Christian, or because they have a different background or a different faith. And we've all seen last year that hashtag, bring back our girls. Has anybody brought back the girls, really? They haven't. We know in Israel that if we don't stand up and defend our boys and our girls, it's just going to be hashtags. And so whether we're in Nigeria, or we're in Kenya, or we're in Congo, or we're here in South Africa, we have to stand up and protect our girls and our boys. And so that shared security concern, that shared desire to fight off fundamentalism and extremism and to be able to live our lives and look towards the Holy Land, towards the Promised Land in faith is something that we share. And there are issues of development. Since Israel, the modern state of Israel, was born in 1948, like many states across Africa, in that same period came to be founded, we shared each other's experiences in development. And Israeli experts came across Africa and shared some of our lessons of agriculture, of water management, of drip irrigation, of education. And we developed together. And today, in 2015, economic ties between Israel and Africa are great. all over this continent, in Nigeria and in Ghana, in Ethiopia and in Kenya, in South Africa, friends. For the 5th consecutive year, trade between Israel and South Africa grew. Israeli exports to Africa grew. The miracle of Israeli success in high tech, in agriculture, in ingathering of my people after 2,000 years of exile, of seeking peace with our neighbors despite everything, is a story that needs to be told. And we together, friends, are Joshua and Caleb. And so I've now been in your country, here in South Africa, for coming up on 2 years now. And the abiding lesson is, and Ben, you spoke to it earlier, and you spoke to it well. There's this delusion, this illusion that South Africa and Israel don't have things in common, that we don't like each other, that there's just some sort of animosity. But Ben, you said it right. It's just not the case. And I can bear witness, friends. I've traveled around your country. Last month I was in the Eastern Cape and visited with people and talked agriculture and talked water management and talked job creation. And we had an agribusiness seminar. And 180 people just showed up. They almost just appeared because they understood that we have what to talk about and what to do with each other. And they met with businessmen from Israel, from Israeli companies who are doing business here in South Africa, and connections were built. And we're going to have another event like that in August in Mpumalanga. And we're going to have more and more of these kind of events, of bringing people together and learning from each other, whether it's in faith or in business, because I think that Africa and Israel have lots of business, lots of work to do together. By the way, here in the Western Cape, there are 3 amazing, wonderful partnerships in agriculture between Israel and South Africa. One is the famous Israeli drip irrigation company, Tafim, just outside of Stellenbosch, has a factory. They manufacture here in South Africa that advanced Israeli technology in drip irrigation. Another one is, if anybody knows the fruit, Sharon fruit. A persimmon grown near Swellendam for export almost totally to Europe. Jobs for South Africans, using Israeli technology and know-how, we all benefit. And finally, the Israeli company Chishtil, which has a wonderful partnership with ZZ2. If you eat tomatoes in South Africa, you're eating it, 70% of them are using Israeli technology and Israeli seedlings and Israeli expertise. It's not by accident that at Woolworths, the best brand of tomatoes they sell is branded. It's grown in South Africa, but it's branded Israeli tomato because the consumer knows that Israel means quality. So these ties exist, friends. Nobody forced all of you to come out tonight on a chilly winter night, but you know that there's a story to tell, that there's a success that needs to be shared. And show of hands, who's been to Israel? A little more than half. A lot at the Jewish table. So here's the mission I'm going to leave you with, friends, so that we can all become Joshua and Caleb. First, come to visit. Come see with your eyes, right? The spies were sent to see with their own eyes. Come see. Learn and study and learn our shared history and what we can do for each other today in 2015. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, brothers and sisters, speak out. We've got to tell that story. We've got to shout down those 10 bad spies. Because with us, we have the truth behind us. We have the success. We have the benefit of wishing good, of wishing blessings for Africa and for Israel. I thank you for being here tonight. Blessings to all of you and your families. Thanks very much.
Next up, we go to Parliament, where the ACDP hosted a discussion on South Africa's relationship with the State of Israel.
Then it's my great honor and privilege to introduce my colleague, my dear colleague. We've been in Parliament for 16 years together, and it's been awesome. We've known each other with the ACDP for almost 20 years, and
Cheryllyn is the party whip not only for the ACDP, but she represents other parties in Parliament as well. So it's a high position. So she speaks not only when it comes to parliamentary matters, she also represents others. And of course, she serves on various portfolio committees. It's been education, social development, health. But the main purpose of this morning is, of course, the International Relations and Cooperation Portfolio Committee.
You know, one of the things that is a little confusing for people is there's a sense, as obviously as Christians, we have a heart for Israel. And what is Israel? The land, the mountains, the seas. Actually, Israel's the people. And with a heart for Israel, the people, those people will at different times divide themselves up politically in different ways. So having a heart for Israel and for the people of Israel does not mean that we have to be fiercely defending any particular regime, political regime. And I think that's very important that we kind of get that idea out. Obviously, when there is a government of the day, it's good to have relations with that government. And that's important because they're the ones who have the power, and if you want anything done, you need to go through that government to get it done. But you also have to stand ready for people change their mind, and they can vote for anybody at any time, and there can be changeover. And so we don't necessarily need to pin our colours to any cross particularly, but at the same, and that does not mean you love the people of Israel less. It actually means you love them more because they are free to choose and they're free to be exactly who they want to be. And we're not here to tell people what they need to be or that people need to fit into some box or some idea that we have of the Jewish people. They be whoever they are and we are going to love that about them and the diversity of God. So the job that I have here is particular and it's different because in fact, the thing that brings it to mind, I remember in the early days, I'd sort of lumped everybody together. So if you were Zionist Federation or Jewish Board of Deputies, it was all one and the same thing. Until I got a little clue that, you know, all of us, wherever we placed, have a different agenda because we have a different focus. You have a different goal that you want to achieve. And it really helped me to start to figure out to help you, I need to know what your goal is. It's no good me just doing I think I'm being nice and saying whatever. It doesn't necessarily help you at all. So in politics, you have to figure out what end result do you want, and then try to behave, do the things that you need to do to get that result. And I watch a lot of people a lot of the time doing what they feel like doing, saying what they feel like saying, and completely ignoring the fact that it's getting a completely different result to what you would assume they would want. And this particular subject, Israel, is one of those areas that I've seen it the most. When I focus on the work that I'm doing, I'm conscious and have been over the longest time that the end result that I would want to see is better relations between South Africa and Israel, which also has a spin-off for the people who have an Israeli identity but live in South Africa. As I said, the difference with Zionists, I realized that it would be about getting things back to the homeland and that kind of thing. And then with the Jewish board, it was more about business here. So again, even there within the Jewish community, there would be a different kind of a focus. So you can't just take this big brush and paint all over everything and think everybody's going to be happy. We really need to focus on what result do we want here. So it did become easier for me to realize that better relations. And what also stood out for me was that I noticed in the meetings that we were having in the beginning is that really well-meaning Christians who were clued up on Israel would come into the meetings and they would speak as if they were foreigners from a foreign land and speak sarcastically and down to the committee. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking, you know, I'm not even comfortable with this, let alone the people that they're trying to have relationship with. So, and I knew my colleagues, having worked with the ANC for the longest time, they are very good at switching off their ears. You know, if people are going to talk what they feel is completely a waste of their time, then they just won't hear. And to me, that wasn't going to be helpful. It was going to be much more helpful if we could actually get the ears of the ANC. As people have often said, it's not about trying to get people to love Israel. We love Israel. Everybody doesn't have to love Israel. But you do have to have a sense of relationship with all people, and it's good for South Africa. It's not just because we're actually representing Israeli people in Parliament. No, what it is that we're actually representing the people of South Africa, and a good relationship with Israel is very good for South Africa. Anyway, so the ACDP has worked to strengthen relations between Israel and South Africa. And the spin-off of that, strengthening relations between the Israeli people who are in South Africa and government, so that business can flourish and people's lives can be as good as they can be. This, of course, doesn't mean for me about being overtly partisan. It is more helpful for me to be who I am in the committee. I am a committee member, and I have an open mind, and I look at the things, because I'm far more valuable there in terms of bringing some kind of thought to look at something more rationally than if I am who I am. In the early days, I used to say, no, look, I'm just like you. I'd say to my ANC colleagues, I'm just like you. You're completely in solidarity with Hamas, and we're completely in solidarity with Israel. This is why we understand each other. And there was that kind of sense. But and that's good, because it's good to be honest. But at the same time, diplomatic relations is exactly that. It's got to be diplomatic. Well, again, things like, for example, getting to be on the trip, fighting hard for a trip to Israel, for starters, was quite amazing. And that was really not going to happen. And eventually it did happen. And also, with no help from Israel, because Israel was as many blockages as our committee in terms of getting there. So we eventually got there, and for me to be on that within that group was huge, because it's easy to block us. We're a small party. We don't feature. So to be put there, you have to be specifically placed there. And the same thing happened with Iran recently. Obviously, the South Africa-Iran relations, there was a bilateral. And again, it was a delegation of 3, and I got to be a part of that delegation of 3. So you have to, these are things you can't make happen. They do or they don't. And it was, again, very, very interesting, because obviously, and I've been to Iran before, actually also with the speaker when she was speaker previously, and that was particularly interesting, and being able to see the difference between Iran of 2006 or 7 and the Iran of today. It was also interesting for me, because I had built there were still people that I'd built relationship with before, people who would not share with our government delegates what real life is in Iran, but would share with me because they felt safer. And I've been into their homes and can see almost the schizophrenic existence of what you have to be on the outside and who you are in your home, and those kind of things. And so Iran was particularly interesting, and you never know, obviously hearing firsthand, our government was particularly careful not to enter into anything that they would bring up about Israel and Palestine. There would be a lot of talk about democracy. There was a lot of talk about having things in common that strangely didn't appear to be in common at all. But again, this is diplomacy. A lot of it is saying what you want people to be. I'm treating you as I want you to be for me. And out of that, interestingly enough, often comes the right response, that people start to respond as you would want them, rather than, and otherwise, if you're just accusing and pointing out people's faults all the time, people get very comfortably seated in that place of just behaving and not having to come up to any other standard. So there's a method in the diplomatic relations that is leaning towards trying to encourage other people to be the best they can be. And also all the time knowing that we as South Africans are not always the best we can be. And if people started pointing fingers at us and cutting us off, it would be hugely problematic.
Good. Thank you, Lily and Madam Chair, Louise, for the very warm welcome. I was very taken with what our keynote speaker, Cheryllyn, said, she's still here, said about knowing as a politician what people want and what people need. And it took my mind back to 20 years ago when we started Africa Tikkun as it was then. It was started by my late husband and by Dr. Bertie Lubner in order to start by coordinating the various Jewish efforts to help the disadvantaged in the wake of the new democracy. Then we were merely amateurs. When I look back on the early days, I feel quite ashamed by the fact that we really did not know what we were doing. We had this wonderful vision that we were going to make life better, but how? Where to start? And we thought that we would start by that we knew what people needed, but that wasn't the way to go. And when I look back, I realized that it took about 5 years for us to understand that the only way Tikkun was ever going to succeed was to make partnerships with community-based organizations who would lead us the way in the places where they were, to show us their disadvantages and to explain to us what it was that they needed. And in that way, we became more successful. What we have now is an organization which runs 6 community-based centers in disadvantaged areas all over the country. They're basically all the same, because in the end, what came out of the deliberations with our partners was that what Jews are good at is promoting family life and promoting community life. And that's what we do. The work in our centers is now, we call it from the cradle to career. You have to try to preserve the ethos of what you started. It's very easy for what was a benefactor organization, I hesitate to use the word charity, you have to be very careful that it doesn't become such a business-orientated organization that you lose your soul. All of these challenges are quite difficult to come to. Let me just finish with a little story. In addition to working for Tikkun, I also look after a little sister of Tikkun. It's called the Chief Rabbi C.K. Harris Memorial Foundation. And it provides training, professional training for all kinds of professional workers, clergymen, doctors and nurses, medical profession, development workers in organizations like Tikkun and others, and the Jewish communal organizations, where when they come to us with the necessity to train staff, that's what we try to do for them. And so 5 years ago, when traffic between South Africa and Israel in terms of groups going to Israel was much easier than it is now, in conjunction, in partnership with the National Council of Childcare Workers, we sent 7 South African childcare workers to Israel to a course run by Mashav, the educational arm of the Israel Foreign Office, and they had a specific training on the recognition and the holistic treatment of child abuse. And they were there for 3 weeks. It was a great success. But the thing that I want to tell you is this. While they were there, 2 of them, bless them, were baptized in the Jordan. Now, if that is not an example of what Jewish and Christian organizations can do together, I don't know what is.
That's our show for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. We value your comments and suggestions for the show, So please write to us at info@familypolicyinstitute.com. Please visit our website at familypolicyinstitute.com and subscribe to my weekly newsletter. This is my primary method of sharing critical information concerning faith, family, and religious freedoms in South Africa. You can also join our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Remember, the latest edition of Joy and Jeug magazines are available at retail stores across the country. Make sure you get your copy. Thank you for joining us tonight. God bless you, and remember, keep standing.